So good morning, everyone. Today we are back with the lecture number 10 of operating system. And today we are going to study about a very, very crucial and important concept of operating system, that is deadlocks. So quickly, let us see what exactly is a deadlock and how can we prevent our system to going into the deadlock condition. So here we are going to see about deadlocks first of all. So while reading deadlock, these are the objectives of today's lecture. So the objectives would be we'll be knowing about what exactly is deadlock. Then we'll see example, what exactly is a system model. How can we characterize that whatever activity that has happened in our operating system is actually a deadlock. Then we'll learn how we can handle the deadlocks. Then handling a deadlock comes when actually the deadlock has occurred in your system, only then we can handle it. But there could be a point where we'll prevent our system to getting into this deadlock condition. So deadlock prevention we are going to see. After this we'll see how can we avoid this deadlock. Then we'll do this kind of thing where we'll assume that our system has already gone into the deadlock condition. We are going to see that how can we detect the deadlock in a system if the system has been infected by the deadlock. And then lastly we'll be seeing how can we recover from the deadlock. Once the deadlock has occurred in your system, how we are going to recover from that condition. So these are few 6 to 7 points that we are going to cover up today regarding deadlock. So let us just quickly understand here that what exactly is a deadlock. So as I told you, the objective here is to develop a description of deadlocks which will prevent the set of concurrent processes from completing their task, and to present a number of different methods or models for preventing or avoiding deadlocks in a computer system. So first of all, let us just go for the definition part of the deadlock, which says that, see, any two processes or more than two processes are said to be in a deadlock condition. They enter into a deadlock condition if they are blocked. Now, why they are blocked? Because both of the processes are in waiting condition. Now, when I was telling you, when we had a lecture about the process, I told you this thing that the process has its own life cycle. The process has got its own life cycle where a process first of all needs to be created. After creating, it has to wait for the resources. It has to be in a waiting condition where or the proper it has got the proper requirement of the resources and the data to run. So here is the condition which we call that a process is inside a waiting state, and it will remain in the waiting state until it gets all the resources and the data which it requires. So this is the condition where even the deadlock can happen. Why? Because see, there could be two processes which are holding a resource, which is desired by the another process, right? And each holding a resource and waiting to acquire a resource held by the another process in this set will always create a deadlock. Or I can say a process can be deadlocked if it is waiting for an event which is never going to happen, like the starvation condition. I told you about this. The starvation condition is a condition where a process is waiting for a particular resource, but it is not getting that resource until it dies. So these are some of the conditions which can happen when two processes get into a deadlock condition. So here you can see this example. I have shown it with a small diagram. Here let us see that these are the two processes, A and B. As you can see, it is A process and this one is a B process, right? Now there could be a condition where I can say that, see, A has already got the resource T2. This arrow shows it has already got the resource T2. This resource T2 is already assigned to A, right? Now to run completely, it requires, this process also. So this is one condition. And for B to execute, it needs to have T1 process, which is already acquired by A. So here you can see two conditions. C, A is already acquired T1 resource and B has already acquired T2 resource. But to run completely, A require B and B require A, or A require T2 or B require T1. So both of them are acquiring one resources and both of them are in need of the other resources grabbed by each of them. So this condition is a cyclic format. This condition is a waiting state where nobody will get, nobody will get executed. Why? Because both of them need two resources and they already have one resource and they are in need of the second resource, which are, already grabbed by each other. So nobody is going to leave the resource and nobody is going to take the resource. This is the condition where the processes get stuck and this creates the deadlock condition. So these conditions are basically known to be deadlock, and it occurs in operating system when any process enters a waiting state because another waiting process is holding the demanded resource. So see, deadlock is a common problem in multiprocessing where several processes share a specific type of mutually exclusive resource known as soft lock or software. Now, what could be the examples of deadlock? See, we can take the real-time examples. Like a real-world example would be traffic, which is going only in one direction. That could be a possibility. Now, there could be we can consider a bridge as a resource, right? And it is a one-way bridge. Let's say only one vehicle can go, either go that side or go their side, right? So let us assume when two cars coming from the opposite direction, they get stuck in between the bridge where only one car can pass at a time. So what will happen? They cannot go back and they cannot even cross each other because that is a one-way road. So this is the possibility of deadlock that occurs. This is a real-time example. So, when deadlock happens, it can be easily resolved if one car backs up. This is the condition where we can do. Now, if one car backs up, the other car can, easily move away. So this is the condition that even in resources also, when in operating system, this deadlock condition occurs, what can be done is either the process has to be terminated or one process, can leave, or it can, set free one of the resources so that one process can run at a time, and after that the one process which will get completely executed, it can hand over all the resources that it has already grabbed. It can give it back to the other resource. So this is a condition which can happen in operating system, and we can prevent it like that. So this is one condition. Now see, this is the example of a deadlock where there are semaphores A and B which are initialized to 1. Semaphores, as I told you, they are binary variables, they are binary lock variables, and they are having only two values. Either they have value 1 or they have value 0, right? Now, if a semaphore is having value 1, that means it is already engaged. It is into the critical section. So here, when they are initialized to 1, we can say that they are in a waiting condition. Then see, this is one of the examples of deadlock. You can see here, this is a deadlock condition. No car is able to pass from here. Can you see? No car can make a further movement just because they are stuck into a deadlock condition. So this movement is possible only in the way when one car has to back up. Like see, if this car moves up or this car backs up, this one, you can see here, top right corner. If this car backs up, even this car will be backing up. In that case, this car can move this way, right? So this is the case that if you want to prevent deadlock, if you want to remove backlog, and you want to get free from that deadlock, you need to back up something. One of the resources or one of the entity has to back up, right? It has to take a back step. So this is the way a deadlock can be prevented in the system. Now let us see the system model here. So here we are seeing a system model to see what exactly we have in a deadlock. How can a deadlock occur? Now the system model says that a system always consists of some resources. Now resources can be of types, let's say R1, R2, Rm. Here by resources, what do we mean? It can be some kind of input output signal or some kind of a file or some kind of a data which is required by a process to get executed. So this could be CPU cycles, the memory space, as I told you. So these are the resources as you can see here. And in general, we'll be denoting it by R1, R2, Rm, right? So there could be multiple resources. So in a system model, we assume that there are multiple resources that the processes are in need when they want to get execute. Next, each resource type has WI instances. Like you can say that when we are talking about a memory space, let's say we are talking about a memory space, then memory space is not a single entity. It consists of several instances, like there could be several blocks of memory. So a process, let's say there is a process who wants to have only 2 bytes. So out of this whole lot of memory, we can give only 2 bytes to a particular process, and this same memory can be shared by another process who needs 3 bytes. So let's say 2 bytes is allocated to P1 process, and the other 3 bytes are allocated to the other process. So these blocks can be understood as the instances of the resource. So the resource is only one. Let's say the whole memory space is considered to be resource one, but this memory space has got several instances. As I told you, that instance one is of, let's say, 2 bytes, instance two is of 3 bytes. There could be some more instances which could be of several other varying sizes. So this is called instances. So every resource is considered to have multiple instances, and this is the way that we consider that the resources are in a shared manner. Their resources act as a shared entity. They can be allotted to several other processes at the same time, right? And even this should happen in the operating system. This should be there. If there would not be several instances, even that is one of the reason why deadlock can occur. Because if there would be only a single instance, then it can be the case where the resource is allocated to only one process, and the other process is always waiting for that resource to get free. So it is required, it is preferred that a resource should have several instances so that it can be shared among other processes, right? Now, each process utilizes a resource. How? First, see, there is a cycle sort of thing, that a process who wants to utilize a particular resource, who wants to use a particular resource, what it has to do, it has to go through three-step process. What is it? First of all, the process has to make request to the resource. See, a process cannot directly grab a particular resource. First, what it has to do is it has to make a request. It has to request that I want to access the resource. So first, it has to request the resource. If the resource is available, if the instances inside the resources are available, then only the resource will be granted to a particular process. Now, in that case, once the resource is granted to a process, then it can be used by the process. So first, what did we do? We first of all requested the resource. Secondly, if the resource is granted to the process, only then the process is going to use that resource. So once the process has used the resource, then only it can free it. So third step is to release the resource. Even this is required every time. A process once executed, a process once done with the resource, it cannot keep on grabbing the resource, right? It has to leave, it has to release, it has to free the resource once it is done with the utilization of the resource. So this is a 3-step process. A process has to go by these 3 steps. First, it has to request the resource. Second, if the request is granted, it has to use the resource until its execution is done. And once its execution is done, it has to release the resource so that other processes can use it. And the violation of any of these, steps can uh, move forward and can have the deadlock condition. So, in fact, the third step, that is of releasing, it is an important step. If a process doesn't release a resource, it will, generate the deadlock condition. So, this third step is considered to be very crucial in processes, execution, where once the process is done with the execution, it has to compulsorily release the resources. This is an important point that you should keep in mind. Now, there is a point, as I told you, that however we are trying a lot of hard efforts. I'm trying my best to in operating system to avoid the deadlock, that the deadlock should not occur. And I remember these 3 conditions, that I have to request, I have to use, and then I have to release. But let us assume that somehow the deadlock has happened in your system. It is not proceeding further, it is not executing the things. Then how would you identify that the system has the system has gone inside the deadlock condition? How would you characterize? So these are the 4 important conditions which should be there when a system is under deadlock, right? When a system is under deadlock, these are the conditions that I'm going to tell you now. These are the 4 important conditions that should occur simultaneously. Do remember, simultaneously these 4 conditions should be there at that time. It should not be the case that only one condition, or let's say 2 or 3 conditions, are occurring at the same time for the deadlock to occur. So keep this in mind, that whenever you want the deadlock to occur inside the system, these are the 4 conditions. These are the 4 necessary conditions to be there inside the system. So let us just quickly see what all are the conditions for the deadlock, right? Now, first of all, the mutual exclusion. Here you can see the mutual exclusion part. It is written that we should have mutual exclusion. Now see, mutual exclusion is a form of mutex, right? It is a special type of binary semaphores. I told you semaphore is a locking variable. It is a binary variable which is used to keep check on the critical section, when to enter into the critical section and when to exit the critical section. So it is a form of a binary semaphore which is used for controlling access to a shared resource, right? Now it includes a priority inheritance mechanism to avoid extended priority inversion sort of problems, right? It allows current higher priority tasks to be kept in the block state for the shortest time possible. Now, resources shared, such as read-only files, never lead to deadlocks, but resources like printers, tape drives, which is a very common thing, which is required by each and every process, it needs exclusive access by a single process. Because it can happen at any time that let's say I'm making a PowerPoint presentation, I want to get that printed. So even in that condition, I can give a print command, or let's say at the same time, even I'm working on the PDF file, I'm working on the Word file, and I want to get my document printed. Again, I can give the print command at the same time. So understand this thing, that there are some processes, there are some resources like these printers, these tape drives, these storage devices, which are required by almost each and every process. So this is the condition. These are the resources, which are more prone to such kind of a deadlock condition. Else, if you are working on a read-only file, that is a different process. Even because not all processes are in requirement of such kind of read-only files. So those read-only files can be prevented from the deadlocks. But where we are talking about the things or the resources which are in a high demand of sharing, they always go to the resource this deadlock condition. So we can say that if you want to prevent, here's the characterization we have only seen. So only one process at a time can use a resource. Now next condition by which you can characterize that yes, the deadlock has occurred inside your system is hold and wait condition. Now, what is hold and wait? See, in this condition, basically, processes must be stopped from holding single or multiple resources while simultaneously, waiting for another more resources. So this could be a condition like hold and wait simply means that a first process is already holding some process for whatever resources it requires to get executed. Let's say it requires four resources to get complete execution, right? Now let us assume it has already acquired two resources. It is already currently it is holding those two resources which it requires. Out of four, it has already got two, and it is holding those two resources, and it is requesting the access of the other two resources. So this could be a condition. This is hold and wait. You are holding some resources and you are waiting for some other resources. So what will happen here? You can understand that you are requesting the resources, the access of the resources. That is a different part. But the two resources that you are already holding, what will happen, there could be some of the other processes which are in wait of getting those two processes which the process is already holding. So what will happen, in this case, the other processes will be waiting for these two resources, and this process is waiting for other two resources. So this has again created a deadlock. Why? Because until this process is going to release these two processes, no other process can execute. And if no other process can execute, even that is waiting for other resources. So this whole lot of chaos is creating a deadlock condition. So this is called hold and wait. So this could be one condition for the deadlock to occur. Then the next condition is called a circular wait. Now, what is circular wait? Basically, see, it imposes a total ordering of all resource type. Circular wait also requires that every process request resources in increasing order of enumeration. Right. Now, let us take one example where there exists a set, like we have some processes from P0 to Pn of waiting processes, such that we can assume that P0 is waiting for a resource that is held by P1. P1 is waiting for a resource held by P2. P2 is waiting for a resource held by P3, and like this till Pn, right? Now, this Pn is waiting for a resource that is held by P0. So, you see, P0 for P1, P1 for P2, P2 for P3, and likewise it is going on. So this condition is, it is creating a circular wait where nobody is going to release its resource that it is already holding, but it is making a request to acquire another resource, and no process wants to, give back or release the resource it has already acquired. It is in a wait that as soon as I'll grab the another resource, I'm done with the process. So no process is going to release the process. Every process in a greed, it is in a need to get executed first. As soon as it will get the acquired resource, shared requested resources, it will quickly get executed and get free. So this is the condition where this deadlock can occur. Now, the fourth important condition for the deadlock to occur is called no preemption. I have told you the term preemption earlier in earlier lectures also. Preemption means forcibly or forcefully stopping a process from execution. So that is called preemption. And here, what we are talking about, that there is no preemption. So what does that mean by no preemption? See, a resource can be released only voluntarily by the process holding it. After that process has completed its task. So, see, a deadlock can even occur when the process is not releasing the resources which others want. So here, if you are not preempting a particular process, you are not forcibly snatching the resource from it, it will never happen. Let's say that it has, as I told you in the earlier example, that it is already holding some of the resources and it is not ready to free them, and still at the same moment it is waiting for another resources to get the access. So what will happen if this process get elongated? Then in that case, the operating system should intervene, and it should preemption, it should use preemption. Forcibly it should take or snatch the resources from this process, so as to give access to these resources to the other processes, so that they can run. And in this simple case, if the operating system interfere or intervene, in that case the deadlock can be set aside. So this is a condition: if you are not preempting the resources, if you're not preempting the particular processes from grabbing the resources, the deadlock can occur. So these four are the mandatory conditions for the deadlock to occur in a system. Out of this, even if a single condition is not there, then the deadlock cannot occur. So if you want to overcome from the deadlock, once your system has gone inside the state of deadlock, and if you want to recover from that system, you can make uh, out of these four conditions, you can just take one condition and you can find the solution for that. And if you have found the solution for only a single condition, then it could be a case where your system will not go into the deadlock state. So this could be taken out. Now, one of the important thing here to see, to practically see how the systems are working out, and how, what all are the chances of getting the system inside a deadlock, we have a resource allocation graph here. So understand first of all that what exactly is a resource allocation graph. So a resource allocation graph is nothing but a pictorial representation of a system, of the state of a system, right? As the name suggests, the resource allocation graph is the complete information about all the processes which are holding some resources, or they are waiting for some other resources. Now, see, it also contains the information about all the instances of all the resources, whether they are available or being used by the other processes. So, in resource allocation graph, the process is represented by a circle. Whenever you are making a resource allocation graph, do remember exactly you need to represent your process with the help of a circle, while the resource is represented by a rectangle. So do remember, the process is represented by circle and the resource is represented by a rectangle. So here I'll just show the graph to you. First of all, you can see V is partitioned into two types, the vertices which we are talking about. There could be two types of vertices. P is the set of consisting all the processes in the system, and R is the set of resources in the system. And we already know, because we are talking about a graph is nothing but a collection of vertices and edges. So there are two types of vertices: the process vertices and the resource vertices. And as I told you, the process vertices should also always be in circular shape, and the resource vertices should always be in the rectangular shape, right? Now, when we talk about edges, now here the edges in the resource allocation graph, we have 1, we have two types of edges. One is the request edge and one is the assignment edge. So request edge is like directed edge from the process to the resource. Do remember this thing. Whenever you see an arrow symbol in between, starting from the process towards the resource, that is a requesting edge, that a process wants the access of a particular resource. And the second type of edge in the resource allocation graph that you can see is called the assignment edge, where there is a direct edge between the resource and the process. If you see a directed edge, a arrow where the source, where the starting point is the resource and ending point is the process, that is called an assignment edge. Why? Because here we symbolize that the resource is already granted to the process, already assigned to the process. So there is a whole lot of difference. If you see the arrow from P1 to R1, that means process is requesting for a resource. And if you see an edge from resource to a process, that symbolize that the resource is already assigned to the process. So we have to keep this in mind. Now these are some of the symbols that we are going to use in the resource allocation graph. As I already told you, the process is always denoted by a circle, right? Whenever you want to show a process inside the the resource allocation graph, you need to symbolize the process using a circle. Similarly, if you want to represent the resource, first of all, if you want to represent the resource, you need to make it rectangle or square in a shape, right? Now, if you want that the resource, if you want to show that your resource is consisting of 4 instances, or let's say any number of instances, you need to show it with the help of these small squares inside it. So here you can see I'm showing that a resource is having 4 instances here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it is shown like this. Then let's say P1 request instance of RJ. Like, let us assume that there is a process P1 which is requesting a resource RJ, right? So how do we represent it? Using this, right? This is a circular form, this is a process, and it is requesting. I told you, whenever we want to make a request, we need to, make a direct edge from process to resource. So here we have requested the resource. Now, let's say that this P1 has been granted the instance of RJ. As I told you, and I have given you one example of the instances inside a resource. Like if you have a complete memory, the instance could be some portion of that memory. So let's say if your process require only some portion of the memory, I'll call it the instance of that resource. The resource is memory, and the instance would be the portion of that memory. So here, this is showing, as I told you, if the direct edge is from resource to process, that means the resource has been assigned to the process. So here we are assuming that this resource has already been assigned to the process. And here you can see this, especially this diagram here, you can see this inside this particular resource, there is a specific point from which we are showing that the arrow is given to the process. That means a single instance of this resource is allocated to the process. This is what we mean by the resource allocation graph, and this is how it works out. Now this is one of the example of a resource allocation graph, as you can see here. See, these P1, P2, P3, all are processes, and what is happening here? See, P1 is having a direct edge towards R1 resource. That means it is making a request for the resource. Similarly, if you see this R1 is having a direct edge from R1 to P2. That means this P2 has acquired R1, or let's say this resource R1 is already assigned to P2. Similarly, P2 is in request with R3. P2 is requesting resource R3, and at the same moment, this resource R3 is already assigned to P3. Similarly, here you can see the direct edge from R2 to P1 and P2. So here we are showing that this R2, this resource R2 is having 2 instances, right? So one instance is assigned to P1 and another instance is assigned to P2. This is a case, which happens very frequently in multi-processing system. So in multi-processing system, the resources that are shared among the processes, they have multiple instances inside them. Here you can see there is a difference between R1 resource and R2. Here you can see R1 is having only a single instance and R2 is having two instances which are distributed. Let us assume this R1 would have got one more instance, then this problem of P1, P2 has been resolved, right? So this is a case, and there you can see another resource R4 which is having three instances, but this resource is not requested by any other process. So this is how you can represent this resource allocation graph. Now here you can see this is a reallocation, this is resource allocation graph, which is showing a deadlock condition. How? See, I'll tell you this. Now assume this, that R2 resource is already assigned to process P1, but it is in request for resource R1, which is already held by P2, and at the same time P2 has already been assigned with this this R2 resource, and this P2 is in request with R3, which is already assigned to P3, and P3 wants to grab one of the instances of R2. So this is making a circular condition. Circular wait is there is no preemption, this is hold and waiting condition. So, and the mutual exclusion is not there, mutually exclusion is not there. So this is a condition which is encouraging and which is rising the deadlock condition. So here you can see this is a deadlock state. Now here your graph is having a cycle, but there is no deadlock. How? See, there is a process P1 which requires, or which has already been assigned with R2's resource, one of the instance of R2 resource, it has already assigned, and it is requesting R1 resource. Now this R1 resource has got two instances which are given to P2 and P3, and this P3 is already assigned R1 and it is in request with R2, and same time there is a process P4 which is already assigned R2. So why there is no deadlock? Let's say that once this P4 will be completed, P4 is not requesting any other resources here, P4 will be executed once it has got R2. So whenever it will release, it will soon release R2 as it has completed the execution. So once it has it will going to release R2, this R2 will be given to P3, and when P3 will get this R2, it has already got R1, once it will get R2, it will also release this resource. So whenever this resource will be released, the P1 process is going to execute. So no process is going inside the deadlock condition here. So this is a simple case where the cycle can be there, but there is no deadlock condition. Now, what are the basic facts related to deadlock? See, if graph contains no cycles, if there is no cycle, then simply we can understand it by this, that there is no deadlock. But if a graph contains a cycle, what can happen? If only one instance per resource type, then deadlock. As I told you, if a resource is having only a single instance, then there is a chance of having a deadlock condition. But if if a resource is having multiple instances, then there is no surety, there is no guarantee that the deadlock will be there. But yes, there is a possibility that the deadlock can be there inside the system. So there is a difference. If a resource is having a single instance, there is a short deadlock in your system. But if it is having multiple instances, there could be a possibility that one of the instances of a resource is free and we can assign it to a requesting process. So these are some of the facts that you should keep in mind while you are dealing with the deadlock condition. Now let us quickly move over to question. We have some practical questions to solve. So suppose there are three processes, P1, P2 and P3. P1 requires 2 resources, P2 requires 3, P3 requires 4. What are the minimum number of resources required so that system will never enter in a deadlock? So what do? We can assign one less number of resources than required to each process. Let's say, as I've told you that P1 required 2 resources, what we can do is we'll assign only one resource to P1. Now P2 requires 3, we'll assign only 2 to them. P3 requires 4, we'll assign 3 to them. Then to complete any of the given process, we simply need one process. So the total number of resources required here is, what will it be? 1 for P1, 2 for P2, 3 for P3, and only one resource is required to complete the execution of any single process. So the minimum number of requirement of a resource that it can never enter a deadlock is total 7. So it is as simple as that, and it is a quick trick. Then let's say question number 2. Now suppose there are 3 processes, P1, P2, P3. P1 is requiring 3, P2 is requiring 5, and P3 requires 7. What are the minimum number of resources required so that the system will never enter a deadlock? I told you in the previous example, we are going to assign one less resources to all the requiring processes. So P1 requires 3, we are going to give it 2 only, right? Then P2 requires 5, I am going to give 4 only, right? Then P3 requires 7, I am going to give only 6, right? So it comes out to be 12, and one more resource to prevent them from going inside the deadlock. So 12 plus 1, that comes out to be 13. So minimum 13 resources are required so that the system must stay in the safe condition. Safe condition means no deadlock. Now minimum resources required, how we are going to take it? In general, the minimum number of resources required so that the system must be in a safe state, that is request 1. That means the process which is requesting the number of resources minus 1 plus resource number 2 minus 1 plus resource number 3 minus 1 plus 1 at the end. So it can be taken up in a generalized form where summation of from I to n, where Ri minus n plus 1 is the complete formula which you can use to find out the minimum number of resources required for the process to be safe. Okay. Now question number 3 appears here, where it is said that suppose there are 5 processes, P1, P2, P3 and P4 and P5. Now P1 requires 4 resources, P2 requires 3, P3 requires 2, P4 requires 9 resources, and P5 requires 8. What are the minimum number of resources required so that the system will never enter in a deadlock? So how can we do that? We can simply put in the formula. Just see this formula. What is this formula? Summation of Ri minus n plus 1. So this is what we are doing here. Ri is 26, n is 5. So 26 minus 5, Ri minus n plus 1. So Ri is 26 minus 5 plus 1, that comes out to be 22. So this is the minimum number of required resources for the system to be in a safe condition. Next is maximum processes for safe state. What it could be? Now if the total number of resources and need of each process are given, then number of process can also be calculated. Right? Now this can be handled using the same concept that we have seen for the resources part. Now here you can see it with the help of an example, we'll understand it. Suppose each process needs 5 units of resources and a total number of resources are 15, right? What are the maximum number of processes that should run in a safe state? So it was R minus 1 into n plus 1, we have seen this minimum resources formula. If it is less than equals to R, where R is the number of resources required and n is the number of processes, R is the total number of process which is given by this. R is equals to 5 and capital R is equals to 15. So here the total formula is less than 15. If you are going to solve this formula, we'll get 3.5. So if you take the integer part, it will be n is equals to 3. So here only 3 processes are required to be into a safe state. Now again, suppose each process needs 3 units of resources and total number of resources are 100. What are the maximum number of processes should run in the safe state? So again, you are going to apply the same formula here. And with the help of the same formula, you are going to have answer 49. Just go and solve this question so as to get the complete answer and so as to understand what exactly is the formula. I'm going to show it again to you. Just see the formula here. It would be very easy for you. Okay. How can you prevent deadlock? So as I told you, for a deadlock to occur, there should be 4 mandatory conditions that we have already seen. Now, if you prevent any of them condition, any of the one condition from it, like mutual exclusion, hold and wait, similarly, no preemption and circular wait, if you prevent any of the condition to occur inside a system, you can prevent deadlock from occurring, right? So when a process requests what is the safe state, request an available resource, system must decide if immediate allocation leaves the system in a safe state or not. So system is in safe state if there exists a sequence like it is less than P1, P2, Pn of all the processes in the system, such that for each Pi, the resources that Pi can still request can be satisfied by currently available resources, plus the resources which are held by all the Pis with J less than capital I. So we can summarize that if process I resource needs are not immediately available, then Pi can wait until all Pjs have finished. Or when Pj is finished, Pi can obtain needed resources, execute, return allocated resources, and it can terminate. And thirdly, when Pi terminates, Pi can be obtained its needed resources, and so on. This process can go on, right? So if a system is in safe state, that means there is no deadlock. If the system is an unsafe state, then there is a possibility of deadlock. So how we can avoid? Ensure that the system will never enter an unsafe condition. So we don't want to let our process go inside the unsafe condition. So here you can see, if you are inside an unsafe state, there is a possibility of deadlock. But if you are in a safe state, there is no possibility of deadlock at all. So there are some avoidance algorithms, how we can avoid. There is a Banker's algorithm that we can use, resource allocation graph, which are going to tell you how we can use. So we'll understand it till today. We are going to understand this thing. In the next lecture, I'm going to cover up the Banker's algorithm, and there are some other algorithms which can be, safety algorithms which can be used to help out in this resource avoidance, right? So here, I hope that this deadlock condition is clear to all of you. How can a deadlock condition occur? What is deadlock? And how can we prevent it? How can we avoid it? What is safe and unsafe condition? We have seen all these things. Now, the only part that we need to understand is the algorithms that are applied. So in the next lecture, I'm going to cover up the Banker's algorithm. Okay. So till then, let us just quickly go for the MCQ part, where I'm going to share some of the multiple choice questions with you, and you need to decide which are the correct ones, which are the correct answer on the basis of the learnings we have done today. Okay. So let me quickly share this with you. Here are the questions. Quickly see. Invoking periodically to test for deadlock is one of the way for deadlock. Second question says, for effective operating system, when to check for deadlock. So every time a resource request is made, or at fixed intervals, or none of the above. Similarly, with deadlock detection, requested resources are granted to. These are next set of questions, 4 and 5. A problem encountered in multitasking when a process is perpetually denied necessary resources is called. Is it inversion? It is aging? It is starvation? What is it, right? Then a direct method of deadlock prevention is to prevent the occurrence of the mutual exclusion, golden weight. This could be preemption or a circular weight. Then next set of question, 6, 7, 38. Which one of the following is a visual way to determine the deadlock occurrence? Is it the resource allocation graph, starvation graph, inversion graph? We have seen this thing recently in the PPT. Then the next question, deadlock prevention strategies are vary. Is it conservative? Is it straight, complex, and simple? 8 question says, to avoid deadlock, what should we do? We have seen the question already. We have seen it. Quickly answer the question. It is very simple. And the 9th question says, deadlock avoidance requires this knowledge of future. So process, resource, program, or application, any one of them. And simply the 10th question, which says, with a decision is made dynamically whether the current resource allocation request will, if granted, potentially lead to deadlock prevention, avoidance, detection, duration, prevention, avoidance, what it could be. Here are the examples for you. So by this, I hope that the lecture for today's condition of deadlock is already clear to all of you, and I hope you learned the concept of deadlock today, its prevention, how can you characterize, how can you avoid, how can you prevent a system for going inside the deadlock condition. So in tomorrow's lecture, I'm going to cover up the banker's algorithm for preventing the deadlock condition to occur. So till then, keep practicing deadlock. I have shown you some of the numericals related to deadlock condition. Please go through it. Please try to solve some of the questions related to deadlock. And in tomorrow's lecture, we'll see the banker's algorithm together, some of its numericals. So till then, keep studying and keep learning.